Alright. 3, 2, 1. This isn't the best podcast in the world. This is just a tribute to rock and roll music. Hello, everybody, and welcome to the 83rd episode of Thursdays with Moire, running on Friday. Once again, sorry about that, but you know what? Well, next time, baby. Next time. This episode is rock and roll on the floor laughing, and we're talking about musical comedies. I'm your host, Ian Taylor. Joining me tonight is my wonderful co-host, musician, artist, and all else, Stephen King. And we have a special returning guest with us tonight, Daryl. Who are you?
Hey, what's up, everybody? Daryl Ailes from Orange Hat Film Productions over here, down in London, Ontario. I'm really excited to dive into this episode. I've forever wanted to kind of dig into Walk Hard and Tenacious D because they're part of my roster of movies that I just would watch constantly as a young stoner. So I really can't wait to get into this one. Super excited.
Well,
Thanks for having me on, guys.
spoiler alert, but Walk Hard has the best pro-weed campaign I've seen in the movie, but we'll get
I was
into it
gonna
tonight.
ask you about that because of our conversations this past weekend. But yes, regardless, I love that.
It's non-habit forming.
I
uh,
mean,
The cheapest drug
but
there is.
I can't get
that's
into
the best
addiction.
button.
I can't get into an addiction right now. It's not addictive. I'm sorry, we're not talking about that movie
Not yet.
just yet. No, don't worry, that'll
Soon.
come soon enough. So, anyways, before we get started, shout out to the member of Depeche Mode who sadly passed away. I am blanking on his name. I am so sorry.
Oh man, we've had such a rough day yesterday. Holy
So
shit, we
bad.
had 3 major celebrity deaths.
Yeah.
So not only Ray Liotta of Goodfellas fame and B movie fame. I loved him in B movie.
Did you guys cut out? Oh no, 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 no. Shh. Oh no.
members of the group. He wasn't up center stage, but he's been there from the beginning, and he's an absolute legend for that band. And also the drummer from Yes died.
What?
You gotta be
I
kidding
know.
me.
I'm just learning this now.
Jesus.
And this
Jesus.
is a week after Vangelis passed away. Like,
Yeah, Mother Nature,
man,
stop. Stop,
this
we
is
had enough.
this is a sad year for rock and roll, which I think you know we we need to go back and we need to find ourselves something to laugh at, which
Exactly.
Sure.
I think is very fitting for our theme this week, which is music comedies. Starting with This Is Spinal Tap, a rockumentary by
Yeah.
Martin DeBurgi. Um, so I remember seeing this when I was a kid, when I was really getting into the rock and roll music, and my uncle, who was the one that kind of was my gateway into the scene, he's like, you have to see this film. Like if you're into rock and roll music, you gotta see Spinal Tap. And I remember checking it out, and I remember not getting it at first. Like I didn't get like again. Keep in mind, I was like maybe 8 years old or something, maybe even younger. Um, I didn't get that it was like a mockumentary at first at that age, but then I came across it like years later, or maybe when I was like 13, 14, and it just struck me how I didn't get any of, the comedy in this. Like I got that there were some silly things happening, but okay, they're actually a fake band, which is
You're not the only
crazy
one who thinks
revelation to
that, by
have.
the way.
Oh yeah, no, but again, I was like less than 10 years old when I first saw this film, and then a little older when I finally did. And this, from that, this is probably one of my favorite movies for showing, the world of rock music in such a satirical but very real way. Like a lot of the things that this band kind of struggles with and deals with, and the stupidity of them is something very real. Like there were stories I've heard of bands who would try to watch this before doing a show, and they just get bummed out because you know the problems that they deal with are very real problems that musicians face.
Yeah.
In terms of interpersonal relationships or gigs getting canceled, they show up to cities. Just all these kind of things that they deal with. And I think that this film does a good job balancing kind of the reality of things while also creating kind of a loving farce, I would say. Like, it is satirical, they are a fake band, but the actors are real musicians that play the music. And
Mhm.
so it feels just very connected to the real world kind of situation. And it does so, it lampoons the world of rock and roll in a very real and a very loving way, I would say. Like, they really understand kind of what those people go through. And some of the problems they face, albeit probably from their own creation.
Yeah, and the thing is too, like it's silly and satirical, but like you said, it's also very inspiring because I think the big difference between parodies like this and parodies like I don't know, like Epic Movie and Meet the Spartans, the difference of those parodies is that those are very mean spirited. Like you can tell, like the creators just absolutely loathe the source material they're making fun of, and I
Mhm.
think this movie gets it. These are made by people that have a clear passion for rock and roll and the big, like the metal movement in the '80s. Like they understand what they're satirizing. They aren't just poking fun at it because they just out of spite. There's clear love and passion put towards it, and that's what makes it so special and hilarious. Like this is one of my favorite mockumentaries by far. Probably the best film Rob Reiner has ever made, in my opinion. But what do you think,
I
Daryl?
mean,
It's bold. It's bold, man. Um, I totally agree with you guys when you're talking about the aspect of coming at it from like a loving position. I think my original title I threw out for this way back when was fake bands with really good music, which is obviously not as good of a title, but I think it touches more on like while the bands presented in all three of these films are per se fake. I think all of the music in like the reason that that title doesn't work is because it's not really a fake band. When like I gotta say, revisiting Spinal Tap, when I had a very similar experience to Devin, so my big thing revisiting it was I wasn't really like a full on musician when I first saw it, and I never really saw it in those high school years when I was in a consistent band. So like for me seeing it now, the first few songs floored me. Like it was quality
It's
like
so good.
80s thrash. Like it wasn't this like parody like you're saying like I kind of remembered it being as a kid. Like they made some damn good music
no,
and
the
it's
music is
funny and it's
genuinely good.
yeah,
Yeah,
like it's
and
Mhm.
kind of it laid a template for like bands like The Darkness and Steel Panther almost, right? Like they showed like
a
it
hundred
can be
percent.
done.
It's
So
it's 100% like a template for that. Like there's actually some great music here, but it's very tongue in cheek lyrically. But I still sing along with all the songs, and I remember the lyrics as I'm watching it because the music is just that good and catchy.
Mhm.
Like
see and
I
oh no,
think
they
the
sorry.
poured a lot
I
of heart. Go ahead. They poured a
no
lot of
no
heart into it. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. No, and for me, like I didn't have that sing along. Like I, especially with Walk Hard and Tenacious D, I know every word to every one of those songs, right? But with Spinal Tap, the thing I liked was like I was getting fresh, genuine laughs. Again, kind of like you're saying, jokes you may not have got when you were 12 or whenever you saw it the first time. Like I was getting a lot of like me and Jamar were sitting there like, oh my god, this is genuinely friggin' funny music, and it just I don't know. So like just yeah, echoing what you guys are saying, you can really feel the love in this film, and it does kind of structurally for me kind of wade a little bit into this kind of like I guess like Monty Python format of like collection of sketches where like while there is an overarching story, like maybe that it's just that trying to feel like oh they were getting this footage when they could or that footage, but like the moments are so perfect that it feels like a punchline always. You know what I mean? It's
Hmm.
not necessarily like realistic mockumentary. It's like aiming to be a campier version, and I really dug it. Like just that area of playing within mockumentary because I don't know, we're very saturated with mockumentaries nowadays too, which I think I kind of got to take into consideration, right? Because it's a
Sure.
Mhm.
much different landscape now.
It's also
Well,
much
what's
older.
interesting is that all the actors basically improvise everything. Like they would set up the scene and they would create kind of a scenario, but then they would improvise how everything would unfold to give it that
Which
realistic
is
kind of
incredible. It's
unfolding.
incredible.
Like all the actors are credited as the writers of the music and of the dialogue because it was all
I
improvised.
noticed that,
And
yeah.
there's over 100 hours of raw footage that they cut down to
That
this
does not
hour and
surprise me.
20 minutes, which
Wow.
Yeah.
And like
Just
obviously it's not fully completely improv because there's a lot of like prop comedy and like certain things that are like written in the script to give it the
Yeah, there's a
structure.
clear like
Yeah.
concept for like how the
Yeah.
scene should go. It's just how they go about it. It's
Exactly.
kind of written on the spot. There's a goal, but they make up how to reach that goal. And
the
it's
cucumber. I don't know if the ladies that were like scanning for that knew that's what it was gonna be.
I think they were all
'Cause
actors, if I'm not mistaken.
well, the reaction looks genuine. Like
It's
the
really
setup,
convincing, yeah.
it's good acting.
Yeah, I think all of them are fake actors, which is like mind blowing to me because like even that
Wait,
girl
are
at
they
the
fake actors or real actors?
So the impression I got from trivia and what my parents have said about the film is that they're all real actors, either or not this was their first movie or they were just pulled off the street and they were like, "Hey, do you want to do this bit?" But it was all like scripted to an extent. But it's mind blowing. Like even like the girl at the beginning of the movie who was like, "Oh, they're like this great metal band, and like they're all of this. Like it's so genuine. Like everything feels genuine. All of the characters have personality." And it feels real but also absurd. Like there's a line they say in the movie where it's like there's a fine line between stupid and clever, and
Yeah.
this movie
That was my favorite
epitomizes
part.
that epitomizes this movie. Is just the perfect balance between stupidity and cleverness that I was just in awe the entire time. And I think, like going back to what you guys said about the music, I think the music itself is genuine. The jokes kind of come in their performance. Again, they have a goal to reach, but they have different impressions on how to reach that goal. And there's a lot of great running jokes. Like Ned Flanders always gets like caught in something or stuck in something. Somebody has to run out and help him. And like the guy is always like chewing gum and like shaking his dick around in his neon pants. Like it's
Did you just call him Ned Flanders? Sorry.
yeah,
I have
he's
to
the
interrupt.
actor who played Ned Flanders. I don't know the character's name because I'm terrible with names. So
You're kidding me. Oh,
Yeah.
you mean the bass player, Harry
Yeah.
Shearer?
yeah,
Wow.
He's the
voices Ned
voice?
Flanders. Yeah, he voices Ned Flanders.
Oh wow! I thought you were just making a mustache joke.
Oh no,
Wow.
no, he
I thought it was
legitimately
like a
is Ned
mustache go
Flanders.
too. That's awesome.
Yeah,
Wow.
he's incredibly like all of these actors are incredibly talented. Like Christopher Guest, I'm sorry, like I know he's done this kind of movie before, but he nails it because he's just this. He's an idiot, but he's so convinced that he's right that he just like he has like this air of smugness about him. That's always like you feel secondhand embarrassment for him, but that's like a big part of the comedy when he's at the end of the movie during the credits. He's like, "Well, you see this skeleton on here? That's a perfect iteration of what's inside my body because you see, like the veins are." And he's like, "So your skeleton is green?" It's like, "Well, the veins are blue, right?" Like it's just he can't be wrong. He has to make up some bullshit to try and be right in every situation, and like every character just has like so much personality and quirks about them. Even characters that barely get any screen time. Sorry,
Well,
I mean,
the drummer could
but-
get a bit more. That's my one
well,
pet peeve
I
with the drummer.
feel like
but
that
he's
fit,
sidelined
though.
like a drummer,
Yeah,
so
I feel like that was kind of the joke, though, was that he was the one guy who was just like always mellowed out and chill. Like they'd be in the middle of an argument and he'd be just like hating out, like looking off to the side. Like,
I mean,
he's in
the
the
one
tub.
interview he's in is when he's in the bathtub, and then he's also talking about the history of drummers, how one died in a bizarre gardening accident and then spontaneously combusted, and
and
The
then he
law of
spontaneously
averages
combusts.
says I should survive.
And then he blows up and a fat guy replaces him in Japan. Like it.
that was such a good cut. My God.
Oh,
Love that.
the editing in this movie is chef's kiss. Like it's very subtle, but it like I mentioned with like Hot Fuzz and stuff like that, it builds on the comedy in ways you don't even realize. Like when they're talking about like Stonehenge, like it's bad comedy would just drag that scene out for so long and tell us what Stonehenge is for, but it kind of builds up this mystery. It's like, what are they using Stonehenge for? Like this is weird, and they cut like to the stage performance, and we realize, oh, that's a fucking stage prop they're using for Stonehenge. But the editing is added to the comedy. Yeah, yeah, the 18 inches.
The 18 inches, yeah. Oh, fuck.
I don't know how they come up with this stuff, and it's just.
I think the problem is that we had a Stonehenge monument on stage, that was in danger of being crushed by a dwarf. The fucking delivery on that is just
Yeah.
it's seared into my memory. It's so good.
I
There's
was
just so many quotable scenes in this, like that whole sequence where Christopher Guest is showing off his gear. You know, that's a classic where he's pointing at the one guitar that still has the tagger on it,
Don't
like
even
don't
point
touch
at
it,
it.
don't even point
don't
at it,
even
or
point at it, don't even touch
there's
it, don't look.
the sustain. Listen to it. I don't hear anything. Well, you would if it were playing.
Again,
I
like he's
love
so
that one.
stupid, but he has to be right. Like
And
as soon
then
as he's proven wrong, it's like, oh no, I got something else.
And then, of course, you have the amps that go to 11, which I checked was my very first Facebook banner that I ever put up was the screenshot of the amps going to 11. And I thought that was ironically a good selling point for an amp. Like I bought a Line 6 amp that just had 11 dots on it because there was 11 of them.
Did you
I
know
thought that
Amazing.
they?
I unironically thought that mattered.
Did you know that they actually made amps that went up to 11 after this movie? Like this movie was
Oh, yeah.
insanely popular, by the way. It made tons of money at the box office and basically made like documentaries and mockumentaries a household name at the box office. Because before this movie came out, people thought like there's no way you can make a successful documentary. Documentary was just something you show off at like indie film festivals or Oscar like ballot campaigns. But this film just like showed that no, films like that can be successful if you just know how to reach your audience.
Fun fact, this is the only film listed on IMDb where you can rate it out of 11.
Fun fact,
No.
Letterboxd doesn't let you rate it to 11, and that makes me sad.
No, but IMDb does, and it's the only one that does. It's a fun little Easter egg.
I'm checking that right now.
Check,
Yeah.
check it out.
Oh
It's
my
there.
god, out of 11. I love it.
Yeah. It's great, but the best part about that bit that nobody really talks about is when he says like, "Why don't you just get amps that turn up to 10 that just make 10 louder?" And that pause he gives before saying like, "Well, these go up to 11," just that defeated like, "Huh." I didn't even think about that. Like that's what sells the scene to me. Like not just the funny quotes, but the delivery of
It's the
that line.
comedic timing.
Exactly.
There was a scene that I would always bring up whenever possible, but it would keep getting taken down off of YouTube for some reason. It's when he's showing off his song "Lick My Love Pump."
Yes.
Oh my
Oh
gosh, it's so
yes.
beautiful.
And in D minor, it's the saddest of all keys. I could just, I don't even have a review for this movie. I'm just gonna quote it.
No,
It's
please
that
do.
good.
Yeah.
Okay,
I'm just gonna.
Exactly.
then let me give my opposition because while I
Please
totally
do.
agree with you guys, I think there are some things holding this back. In the same vein, how Ian, if you remember back to how you viewed Back to the Future for the first time, I
Huh?
think there is an aspect of this where it's almost too quoted and like too in the zeitgeist that I found like this that like how I was kind of saying about the structure earlier. I feel like you almost get into periods where you're like waiting for the next quotable line to pop up and like even like enough
True.
about mockumentary like in a documentary form like before we had internet like I feel like documentaries have taken a huge step up in the last like 10 to 15 years so like even like you guys were saying like they weren't popular so the thing they're parodying was a more simple format so I don't know, like I feel that and I know I shouldn't because I know when this movie came out and all that, but like when I'm viewing it, like I feel like that was the one kind of drag. It's just like
Yeah, I get that.
almost every funny bit is a quotable line. So I've like haven't forgot them. Do you know what I mean? Like I it's a weird feeling, but
No, I get what you
that's
mean.
the only thing
Yeah.
that held me back with this one.
It's
Yeah.
like the zeitgeist is holding it back. Like the film's basically been spoiled already. I get that. And then
Well,
when you watch it, you're just like, oh, all right,
I mean,
that's
that's
that
the
bit.
problem with any film that gets this successful or
Yeah.
is done this well is that it becomes so, I don't know, up there that it's just easy to kind of see the flaws in it or something. Yeah. No, I absolutely get that. Um, but this, I can't detach the fact that this film was hugely inspirational for me to want to get into playing rock music. Um, which is ironic because you see all the problems that come with that. But I do think it injects just enough of the reality that you're a little more aware of these kind of these things, like when rock bands get very pretentious and full of themselves, and these are the kind of issues that they run into when you have those kind of personalities kind of coming together
Mm.
and clashing, and just them being unaware of these things that they're these problems they're creating for themselves. And I do think that this film reflects on that very well.
Totally.
One of
And I
the
wasn't trying to shit on it by any means. I just want to put that out. Just because we love this so much. I just wanted to bring up like my
Fair enough.
somewhat
fair.
like just because I do love it, but it was a weird different taste this time. That was about it. But yeah, totally agree.
Mhm.
It's
That's
so
fair.
inspirational.
Yeah, and probably like there's lots of elements of satire too. Like it's got some meat on its bones. It isn't just like a silly mockumentary for the sake of it. You talked about like stardom and pretentiousness, but one of the most clever bits of satire for me was like the portrayal of women on like album covers. And she's like, you managed to put like a naked, greased up woman with that black hand holding her on a chain off the album, but like as soon as you do that to a man, it's like, oh, see, it's done to a man, so it's not as offensive, and that's
no,
what
if it's done to the members of the band, if the members of the band are the victim and they're putting themselves out there, then that's different than them doing that to somebody else. That was the whole disagreement over the album cover.
Oh
And
yeah,
they
and
just
they
go
were
with
like, "Damn, that's a good idea," and kind of the bias about that, and the fact that it was like, "All right, here's the new album covers. They're just black. There's no offensive imagery. There's nothing on there. They're just black, bland albums. Because if you don't post any kind of imagery, anything out there, you know, you can't offend anybody." I was like, that was a clever bit of satire that I wasn't expecting, movie.
I also love that character that comes up, Arnie Fufkin.
Yes.
Who's there to promote the album and then doesn't go well, and he's like, "Kick my ass, like
Yeah,
for a man."
just really
And-
kick my ass.
and actually, I remember relating him to what was Robert De Niro's character in The King of Comedy.
Rupert
yeah.
Pumpkin.
Yeah, Arnie Fufkin and Rupert Pumpkin, they're distant cousins from each other.
Very similar last names, so who knows? There's conspiracy
That's
there.
exactly what I mean.
Yeah, don't have too many issues with this one. I guess my only major complaint is, besides the cultural zeitgeist, which I've seen this movie a dozen times, so I don't really let that blind me too much. But my
You have
biggest
to
issue.
say one thing. This is crazy. That this was Robert Reiner's directorial debut. Like this was his first like
He
feature
was
film.
originally going to be in the movie.
Well,
Like,
he
as
was
one of
in
the
the
band.
movie,
No,
like,
well, he was going to be in
he
as
the
one of the
director?
band
Oh.
members. He was going to be one of the band members.
Oh, okay.
But
yeah.
he does play the director, and I had
That's
to write
true.
this down because I thought this was a great little tidbit. But the name Marty DeBurgi is a combination of a bunch of directors that I think he was inspired by: Martin Scorsese, Brian De Palma, Steven Spielberg, and Federico Fellini. That's how he got Marty DeBurgi.
Merged into one. It's great. In terms of like actual issues, I'd say my only complaint, and all of these movies have the same issue to an extent, to varying degrees. I think a few of the jokes go on a little too long. Like, it fits this one the best because it fits the mockumentary format, and I don't really know what they could have done to avoid that necessarily, but like I think like the ham sandwich joke in particular, like it was funny, but I feel like it was going on just a little too long. Like there were just a few joke gags like that were just like, yeah, this could have been either trimmed down a little bit or perhaps improvised a certain way.
Well,
like it's not a major issue. It's just
that was a whole joke on just how bitchy bands can be about catering and how much of a mess
I
it's
know.
like.
I get it.
I think there's that whole story where it was either Eddie Van Halen or Ozzy Osbourne, I forget who, would order like, we want a bowl of M&Ms, but we only want the brown ones. Like they would just have ridiculous requests like that. And I think it's really just there to make sure that you read through the others like requirements that they have.
I believe that's what they said it was more about. Like, because if they've done that, that means they did everything. Yeah.
Sure. But what if they just did that?
Yeah, that would have been
They caught on. Yeah.
Yeah, they would have
My
caught
question. And then what if other like band people caught wind and then wound up each other over coming up with more ridiculous requests? Like,
yeah,
that's
they
what I
got
feel
inspiration from it, just the wrong kind. But it's happened with movies before. You know, we talked about Robert De Niro, Taxi Driver. People will take just about anything from cinema, and I get it. Like I get the joke and what it's satirizing, but again, I just feel like it went on a little too long. I was kind of like, okay, I get it. Like, let's move on to the next thing here. And getting lost behind the stage again, another hilarious scene, but I still feel like it was dragged out a little too long. But that's it though for major issues. Have no other
Yeah, man. I
complaints.
mean, it's hard to really talk about this film objectively when it's had such an influence on you. You know what I mean?
Right?
Like, it's hard to
Oh,
kind of see
totally.
it with it's hard to see it with fresh eyes unless it's been a long time since you have seen it. But it all just kind of came flooding back to me, like all the things I was experiencing when first watching the film. How I didn't really get it when I first saw it. Then the second time I watched it, I found it hilarious, and I couldn't believe that I missed out on all the comedy in this because it's very subtle if you're not used to this style of comedy, right? Like
Hmm.
at that point, I'm pretty sure that the comedy I saw was all slapstick. So when it's all just verbal and these guys just
Oh
being
yeah,
kind of idiots in subtle ways, and you don't get what it's referencing, then it's hard to maybe make heads or tails of it at first.
totally.
Yeah.
But this was the movie that intrigued me in the whole world of rock and roll, but also gave me a sense of perspective and humor about it. Um, yeah.
Ratings.
Set the bar high, which I think was a good thing because specifically musical comedies and the ones we're going to talk about after, I think like they're all trying to reach the heights of a musical comedy like This Is Spinal Tap. Like it really
Oh,
was
for sure. It just,
setting a trend ahead of its
yeah,
time.
agreed. What would you guys rate it out of 10?
11.
Perfect time for that.
I'm giving it a 9 out of 11. What about you, Daryl?
Fair enough.
Wow. Well, sadly, like I said, this one didn't quite hit quite as hard for me. I was originally going to go 6-9, but I think throughout this conversation we've talked it up to be an easy 8 because like there was so much I loved. I didn't even talk about a bunch of stuff I love, like the manager character. Oh, just a perfect parody of what's his name, Al Grossman, who managed Bob
Oh,
Dylan. Like
Oh
perfect,
yeah.
like just to a T. And yeah, like yeah, I think an 8 is a nice solid one for this.
No.
It was
And you know what? And I think eight's good. It gives you enough headroom. You don't want to be cranking those amps all the time because that's actually a mistake that people think you just fully crank those dials, but really that's not how you get a good guitar tone. That's just how you blow out your speakers. So no, I
yeah,
think I think eight's just dialed it enough where it sounds intense, but it's not overblowing the system. So
yeah.
that's
It's not
good.
nice.
overworking the
But
tubes.
I was just reading some IMDb trivia, and I was just giving it my 11 score. But it was funny that when Ozzy Osbourne saw this, he didn't find it funny at first because he just thought it was a real documentary.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
then I think The Edge, who's the guitarist from U2, said that it just hits too close to home. Like it's very,
Oh, true.
which man, and
Says a lot about Bono.
says a lot about U2.
Yeah, and also, you forgot to mention Ozzy Osbourne talked to Rob Reiner. It's like, that was a great documentary. So when can I meet Spinal Tap? And another thing is, Kiss, like the lead singer of Kiss, watched the movie and like bawled in the theater because the scene where they got lost behind the scenes was like way too relatable. Like he experienced that like way too many times at too many different shows that all the memories just came flooding back. So surprising amount of realism for such a silly,
Oh yeah.
silly movie. Speaking of,
And there's so many other references that I could get into, like
yep.
how when he's rubbing a violin against his guitar, that's like a joke
Mountain scene.
on Led Zeppelin, like Jimmy Page would use a
Oh
violin
yeah,
bow, which works, but using an actual violin and then
amazing.
tuning the violin because that was the problem. That's
Yeah.
there's just so many little gags like that oh fuck.
Oh, we
Uh,
had to pause the
I,
movie
I,
because we were laughing so hard at that.
I could gush about everything in this film. I could get into really technical detail on some of the things that they reference, but um, the angle of those symbols aren't really usable. Like when he has them completely on a 90-degree angle, the
Dude,
uh
but like that's
the
so
China
Motley
symbols.
Crue at that time. Like
Oh
it's
yeah,
so
that's
like
a very
on
80s thing
par.
to just create this like chamber of symbols around you. It looks really cool when you have them kind of I guess kind
Oh,
of
it's a cool
encroaching around
visual.
you. Like
Yeah,
it's a cool visual, but like how playable is that really?
so bad.
Not.
Yeah.
Horrible for the tones. Like
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
It can't be good for the cymbals over time, especially if they're kicking the kits over each
no.
night. Like those are gonna crack.
I also love
I
the
I
bit. Oh,
Go ahead.
Oh no, I just love that bit too when he talking the technical stuff when they're trying to think of songs they can play without the lead guitarist, and they ask the keyboardist. He's like, "Oh yeah, I can do everything. I got 2 hands. I can do it."
Yeah,
It's
it's
just
two
Oh
like
yeah.
hands. That's all you
putting
No,
need.
all that pressure on him. Oh,
and they do that whole jazz gig. I love that.
oh, that kills me, dude. Like that is the cringe moment of it all. Like no.
Oh, it was so good. Oh, I also love how at the start of the movie, the only compliment that Rob Reiner can give the band after doing a whole documentary on them is they were the loudest band. Not that they were the best band,
Yes.
not that they were a great band, just the loudest. That's
Just
it.
English loudest band.
Yeah,
I,
that's
I
it.
think they might be rivaled by Swans, who I've heard are actually really one of the loudest bands you'll hear live.
Wall of
Um,
sound, yeah.
Complete cacophony, which
Not
oh man,
exactly ideal.
there's a whole history of music here that one can appreciate. If we had uh, the other guy Dylan that we had on the podcast last week, I think he'll probably go talk about that for hours. We really went overtime last week because there was too many interesting things to talk about. But I think we'll put a pin in this and say that yeah, this movie holds up as one of the best rock films ever made, and it's a satire.
Yeah, I
Right?
know.
Hells yeah, dude.
And it's one of the best. Going from a mockumentary to a mockery, it's time for Tenacious D. That was terrible. Daryl,
I don't
take it
know.
away.
I think it's more of a documentary. I think this is exactly what happened that fair
Ah,
night. No.
I think this is like one of the more high budget like self-made fan films
Yeah.
of a band just creating their own mythology. Like I think they did it. Wasn't there a Tenacious D like TV show on HBO
Yep.
Yeah, that's how
or
it all
something?
began. Yeah.
And that's how it began. And this was basically the movie of that, right?
Yeah,
Um,
yeah. It's an imagining of the tale of tribute. Like if they were gonna
I
do a
see.
long backstory that wasn't just the music video. Like that's their canon. How the band was formed was with like a devil deal, right?
Yeah,
Like
it crazy because it hit me when I looked back at the tribute music video. I'm like, they look younger in this, and the effects are like terrible. This must have been done before, like, and yeah, I guess the chronology, and then I saw, oh yeah, there was a TV show for Tenacious D that I've never seen. I actually want to go back and watch that now because I remember seeing this film when it came, well, not when it came out, but some years later when I was really getting into rock music and I guess this was after School of Rock as well.
yeah.
Um,
Yep.
And the show's
which
nowhere near as polished, right? Like that's the
mhm,
one thing I warn you of going in. I think they really did step it up a bit, which is odd because
for
the guy
sure.
who directed it wasn't really like. I think I can't say it was the only thing he was known for, but the only thing I knew him for before this was the Syphil and Ollie show, which I
Yeah.
don't know if you guys have ever heard of that. It's a
Okay.
very obscure like puppet.
This
Like it's a
this
weird
feels
show.
like a TV directed movie with a higher budget. Like
Yeah, yeah.
it feels like the plot is very kind of episodic. Like it doesn't connect in the way that like a feature film does. Like if this were like your classical type of story, the dad would come back toward the end, or there'd be some redemption arc of him understanding his son and his passions in life, or something like that.
Right?
And I remember just even when I was younger, when I saw this maybe when I was like 12 or 13, like this isn't a normal kind of movie plot. This kind of just goes on a certain kind of
Yeah.
meandering plot. It's still fun though, and I have a blast with it. But
Oh yeah.
it
But
it, it, it definitely doesn't have higher filmic aspirations. It's just there for the rock, and I love it for that reason. But yeah,
totally. Yeah, and the reason being is because like I think it might be one of the only things Jack Black ever wrote. Like
It is the
it's
only
like
thing he's ever
and
wrote.
yes, exactly. And the reason
just
being was because he saw this as such a gigantic failure that after I think it was the like first weekend's box office or maybe it was a bit into it, he swore off ever writing another film again because he thought that
It's
he
a
was the issue.
gigantic flop. Yeah.
yeah.
It wasn't even like compared to movies nowadays, it's not the biggest flop in the world, especially for Jack Black. But like I get that he has
It's not the
standards
biggest flop in
and
the
it's
world. It's just a tribute.
It's just disappointing, yeah.
exactly.
Honestly,
Um
you know what? And again, this is why I put this as like this is a film for the fans.
yeah.
That this is if you like Jack Black, if you like rock music, if you like his band, then this is a great film. It's
And
not really it's not really a type of film that you would venture into otherwise.
And you got to see it as a musical too, right? I think
Yeah,
like the biggest thing is, Spinal Tap is also kind of the same deal. It devotes a lot of time to its performances, but I think this one specifically, like kind of how you said, even the format of the sketch, like it is a sketch kind of vibe, but so like musicals also get that sketch vibe to them because they have like a very focused like they're all about those big dance numbers and like the emotions when you reach the end. Like sometimes they do meander a lot in the middle. So I think
it's
reflecting
it's
that
like
they
it's like the
do this.
emotional arc. The plot doesn't matter as long as we get to these set pieces.
Yeah, and like they do progress, obviously. Like you're saying, it's not like it's completely out of left field. Like there's foreshadowing. There's the whole like him driving the car in the video game is obviously coming back later, and like
There's like
just
setup and payoff and all that, but I think what
yeah,
would have
they do
made
the
it into like
basics.
a movie is if there was something, because you had the whole conflict with his dad early on, and then he runs away, and then you kind of just forget about him for a while. He comes up as like a brief vision and kind of a joke when he's doing the gate simulator,
Yeah.
and all the angry faces are his dad saying, "I should have worn a condom," which is funny. But it would have been interesting. I mean, if I were rewriting this, and maybe this might have been Jack Black's second draft or something, is if Meatloaf somehow came back into it and there was some, even
Just for
if it
more
was just
meatloaf.
shoehorned, and if it was just shoehorned and played up and made like as a joke, but if he did show up, that would turn it into like I think a more transcendental kind of movie. Um, but that's it. I still
Maybe,
think
but
we got
this is
great.
also a movie that ends with the bong of destiny. So I mean, like it totally
Yeah.
knows what it was at the same time, and
Uh,
exploding heads and
I,
fucking
I
like
I love that little animation at the very beginning where it's a rip off THX, but it's THC.
yeah, yeah. The audience is baking. It's like they knew, they knew going into it. Um, dude, yeah. So like for me, this film hits really deep. Like I, strangely enough, my mom was one of the biggest Jack Black fans. We she was
Oh,
down to
really?
see it and didn't care that it was 18A because she thought, like it was a stoner comedy, worst case scenario. And after the opening song, she looked at me
Hmm.
and said, "Honey, this might be a little more adult. Do you want to leave?" And I said, "There's no way I am leaving this movie. I was in love with it. I didn't care that it was swearing and whatnot. I was just, it was hilarious.
Uh,
And being that bit younger too, like,
yeah,
so definitely kind of your vibes about Spinal Tap is kind of how this hit me. Like, this really showed me,
gotcha.
like, oh, fuck. Like, not even like I was nowhere near stoner. Believe me, the weed stuff did not connect to me. I was like, what the fuck's a Bob Marley special? Like, what is this stuff? But it was the
Yeah.
comedy, right? And it was this building a band, like Ben Stiller's the features of everyone. Like my mom freaked out when
Oh, yeah.
what's his name? Tim Robbins, is that it? From
Yep.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
When he pops in,
Shawshank,
she
yeah.
lost it. For me, James Dio, because I was into metal music at the time. I had just started getting into like Zeppelin and like all the classics. So for me, this was like, ooh, I love this. But like I was also watching SNL really heavily, so seeing Amy Poehler and Fred Armisen, like it was really hitting me. And little did I know that the devil was Dave Grohl. So like,
The best
I,
cameo.
Yeah,
right,
man.
and
That
like
was that was a great cameo.
so just seeing all these bits and bobs and again I was a huge Meatloaf fan. Like my parents would always be like, oh, don't worry about him, he's 10 years old and his favorite music's Meatloaf, so he may sing some weird music in the car. And I'm like, yeah, I
I
love
will
Meatloaf, but it's the
do
big deal. Just that first Bat Out of album, Bat Out.
Blazing as I stepped up to his cage. Sorry, I
Right.
just had to
Nice.
break into that, but
Oh no, it's fine.
there's so many good moments in this. It's yeah, I mean, uh and then you get to the cock push-ups.
Oh my god, right? So yeah, and it was one of those more adult comedies, but like at the end of the day, like there's no like graphic sex scenes there besides swearing and bong jokes, which I didn't even
There's
get
a
at
few
the time.
And,
tits.
Like it
and,
wasn't even
and then there's
Yeah,
that
there's some
like
flashing.
close-up prosthetic dick through the through the fabric, but that's about it.
even 12-year-old me knew that was a fake dick.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
100%.
Oh my god. But like, oh dude, like there's just something about the soundtrack. I think that's the one thing that I have to really punch on for me. It was like I can listen to this soundtrack start to finish any day of the fucking week. I love it. It is so dang like right in the pocket. Like Kyle Gass slays on some of those guitar licks, and Yeah,
Can't you
and
see he's a man? Can I hear you applaud? He's not just a man, he's a shiny golden god.
Exactly,
Yeah.
and that's it. Like I could just do the whole fucking thing start to finish if you wanted me to. It's one of those films for me. So yeah,
Don't
no,
tempt
it's
me.
exactly. So yeah,
Yeah.
like fucking, I'm glad to hear you guys liked it too. From what I'm hearing, I haven't heard much from Ian yet, so maybe he hated it.
Well,
Listen,
I got rid of my criticisms about the plot structure off the bat because that was a thing. I was like maybe 12, 13, 14 when I first saw this. And it was one thing that I noticed, like, this isn't like your normal kind of movie plot. Like, some of these things maybe don't quite connect, but I'm still enjoying it just because it's a, Jack Black movie about rock music. But it felt, more episodic. So it wasn't like a great movie, but for fans of rock music, I'm totally into it. And that's where I started just noticing plot structure a little bit more and how you can set up and pay off certain ideas for, grander purposes. But also that this film just wasn't for that. This was all about the music, right? So it did help me kind of create that distinction in my head a little bit, by seeing this and then looking at other films in comparison.
Oh,
listen.
totally, in that way. Yeah, it
Mhm.
definitely leans much more to the sketch comedy area.
Mm.
But yeah, Ian, you've been oddly quiet. Did you hate this one?
Listen, I love Tenacious D. I love their music. Love Jack Black. This movie made me like Tenacious D and Jack Black a lot less. I'm so sorry. I wanted to love this movie so bad. I recommended it this episode, but it was painful. Like, I'm sorry. I didn't find, like, keep in
What
mind,
parts were painful for you?
I all of it. Like, I think it was just
Really?
painfully unfunny. Like, I'll count them down in one hand. I'll count them down. Throughout the entire movie, I had 4 chuckles and one ha. But I mentioned this in the review. Like, I watched Walk Hard before this, and I said, Walk going from Walk Hard to Tenacious D was like going from old Family Guy to modern Family Guy. This movie reminds me a lot of Modern Family Guy, and why I hate that show's brand of humor. Like, the jokes go on for way too long. There there's no punchline most of the time. Jack Black does a good job, but the other musician, I get it. He's not an actor,
Kyle
but he was
Das?
fucking.
He is an
Uh,
actor. He's in many films. But
I
yeah,
thought he was terrible. I thought he was
This
awful in this movie. It was
this
painful
is
to
very
watch him.
much TV humor. Like it's TV humor in a movie
But
format.
it's not. I don't know. I've seen lots of TV humor that was way funnier than this for me, and it's very juvenile and stupid, which is fine. Like, I'm all for juvenile and dumb trash. I love guilty pleasure trash like that more than the next guy. But if I found any of it funny, but I just didn't find any of it funny. I was just watching it with soulless dead eyes, and
Well,
I really couldn't get into it. I'm sorry.
that's fine. Like plot wise, there isn't much happening here that is outside of the usual. It's just a serviceable plot to tell kind of a fun rock and roll kind of story. But at the very least, I think the music sells it. Like the music is what makes it all
Yeah.
worthwhile, I think, and the performances. And there is some chemistry between, Jack Black and Kyle Gass, I find. So those for me are at the very least are like redeeming factors that make this a watchable, enjoyable time. But no, it's definitely not like Chino, right?
No, it's not, and I wasn't expecting it to be. It's just I just didn't find any of it funny. And as for the music, I like the composition. Like, it sounds good. Like, the singing and the instruments sound good, but it has that problem I have with a lot of bad musicals, where it's like, okay, our music is just gonna explain exactly what's happening to the plot and serve no other purpose. Like, unlike you,
Well,
Daryl, I can't
I like
listen to
that
this
I
music
like
on
that
its
they
own.
lean into that. Like during the I had the subtitles up during the car chase sequence, and he was literally describing everything that was happening, and I just found that funny. Like I
But it's
liked
the
that it
same joke
was
they do for every song in the movie, though, and it
it
just got
works.
old for
Okay,
me.
but it
it's
works
not
for
in
me. It
any
works
way
for
the
me here.
same joke. It's like
But it's
maybe
the same
structurally
joke where it's
similar,
like,
but
aha, we're just gonna explain exactly what's happening in the plot. Like, every song was like that.
It works
that's what
though. Like
musicals do. I'm
But
a
I,
little
I mean,
confused by
it's
that.
not.
I think it makes fun of musicals by being so literal though.
Yeah,
Like
But it's the same joke over and over again, and there's so much
but
humor in this that just overstayed its welcome for me. So many jokes that are
all
ruined
right.
because they just didn't know when enough was enough. Like, I think worst example of this was when Tim Robbins is trying to stab them outside of the museum, and like it would have been 10 times funnier if it just showed him like pulling out his knife and the characters just looking at each other and walking away, and that was it. But they have to go. It goes on way too long. It's just the characters are like, no, we could just walk around you. All right, let's go walk around them. And it shows them walking away, and then it shows Tim Robbins standing there yelling at them. Then it shows the police. Then it shows the chase, and then it shows them getting arrested. Like that joke, it should have been a 30-second gag that was turned into a 2-minute gag. And so many jokes were like that in this movie for me.
I don't know. I'm pretty sure that is like bang on like a 30-second gag. I get what you mean. Like it goes on a bit long, but okay. But yeah, because you're not connecting with it though. Like kind of.
Oh,
that's kind of the issue. I would say if like you're into the music at all, like it fills the gaps. You're just not connecting with the music
and I
or
love
the
Tenacious
comedy.
D.
But
I love the
it's
music.
not.
I don't think you were high enough when watching it.
I think I am a very sober man. I was too sober for this movie.
Not even. I don't think this is even like an essential like stoner movie. I think like I think they choose to like Tenacious D are a band that like would mostly do their comedy all within the song. Like it's like that's like saying they should change their structure of the way they write to fit this, whereas I like more that I can sit down and listen to the album like at like any musical, man. Like I just went to see Evil Dead the musical the other week, and it has exactly the same issue you're talking about.
Okay, that's fair.
It's like it's comedy musicals all play that same, like it's not, it's the structure is more so what I'm saying. And I feel you, like the music is very well written, but and like the structure is not necessarily like supposed to be right home about, but I wouldn't say that they're like, I know a lot of movies that go way more indulgent into like long unfunny jokes. I think these are like,
there's worse examples for sure, but it was still a bad example for me.
Yeah, fair enough, but like in terms of like, I don't feel like this is a one note joke kind of film. I think it evolves. No. It has a story that's definitely like going to different places, and like if anything they're kind of trying to be like an early and later stage Tenacious D movie all at once with the whole ending. So like I definitely like agree. It's not anything perfectly messy, but like I mean, if you're talking structure wise, I would put this 10 leagues above Spinal Tap.
Comedy,
so like
comedy's
it's a weird
subjective, Murray.
yeah.
Yeah, I know.
But no, I think there's enough going on here that it works and it's serviceable. Like it's a good, just casual time watching a movie. It's not hyper intellectual or anything, but it's not like just one note, and it's not low effort. They definitely had a lot of passion and fun making this. Like they wanted to get this out there. Like Jack Black's energy just exudes in every scene, and I admire that tremendously when watching this. So, it to me, I forgive a lot of its shortcomings for that alone, just because I can tell they were having fun making it, and I have fun watching it from that. Like it's very infectious kind of energy, and
that's fair.
I like that. I like that they. I don't know if that's how the actual Rock and Roll Museum looks inside. I haven't been, but I like the fact that they signed up to be a part of this and portrayed their own security guards being stoners.
Oh, it's such a good touch.
And I also quoted this this out of context where the guy says, if I see anybody in there, I'm gonna pop a cap in their ass and I'll claim it's self-defense." I can't believe they got that joke in there. That was great.
Yeah, very. That has aged very well. Maybe that's why this movie has a pretty good letterbox.
Aged like fine wine.
Indeed.
That joke.
Something I was kind of thinking about with this movie. This movie has a $20 million budget. I don't know if I believe that, because like it doesn't. Shaun of the Dead was shot for like a third of this movie's budget, and that looks 10 times more professional than this movie does. Well, and the thing is, you could say like all the actors and celebrities, but a lot of them are just friends of Jack Black and Kyle Gass. Like Jack Black, like he's good friends with Tim Robbins and Ben Stiller and Amy Poehler, for example. Like they all probably agreed to be in the movie without, taking too much money.
All. No, I'm gonna say just to get Dio out, like to be friends with them gets you in talks. Like that's the bare minimum. But you still like you're talking about like some big fucking paychecks you gotta write.
Well,
like, especially because Meatloaf did not want to do musical stuff. Like specifically, he only wanted to be an actor in films, so he kind of broke that rule for Tenacious D. And I'm assuming that came with a big
Dio.
paycheck. Yeah, but I mean, Shaun of the Dead had some decently like fairly big actors too, like actors
That's
that
an
are big in
independent
Britain.
film in England, though.
Yeah,
You're talking like two different worlds, man.
but
Like
this is also
they
like an
wanted to make
independent
their
film in
own Hollywood
America.
film. Yeah, but it's not when you have Jack Black as the lead, as the writer. When you're
But
trying to pay everybody
it
the same
doesn't
price. Like he has
feel like it, I
Hollywood
guess.
standards,
Like
right?
the production values are so awful. Like it,
I don't know.
not
There's a
even
lot of
like
jump
a
shots.
Well,
charm.
It's all on
There's
a
ju-
dolly.
it's just
Like,
it's just very standard practice kind of filmmaking. Like it's up there in quality, but it's
Yeah.
not super art. There was one shot that I thought, wow, this is actually some really nice framing. It's when they go into the sewer. There's just a nice symmetrical. Kind of remind me of Stalker, weirdly enough.
Come
Um,
on.
but it was just like a single shot in the movie that I'm like, oh, that's neat. And then actually, oh, I
think about
finally
that.
go going back and watching this since I was a kid, I completely missed the Clockwork Orange reference, and now I totally understand that. Um, and there is like that one crane shot where he's on the bench singing "I'm Just a Baby," and the camera kind of cranes up and looks down on him, and
There's a
that was a
lot of
cool
crane
shot.
shots in this movie. Like I think they just
Yeah,
paid to have a techno
Yep,
crane sitting there and
that's where the
Beckon
20
Hall. Like
million
there's
one.
so many of them.
probably.
But yeah, like
But
I see like a
I
lot of
bet.
plot. Like this is pre green screen, like being like really useful too, right? So a lot
Oh
of those,
yeah.
like sure the flying stuff, but like the mushroom land, a lot of that was fucking practical.
Oh,
Oh,
That
I
was
noticed
yeah,
that.
UV, like
the
Yep.
mushrooms. I love the communist Sasquatch. Um,
like yeah,
That's
yeah.
it's not
The
my forest, brother. It's everyone's.
the devil makeup would have probably been a nice little feat
that
and all of it
actually
because there's
looked
like
pretty good.
Pretty penny.
7.
That
Yeah,
actually
yeah,
looked
there's like
decent.
huge amps that they're just destroying willy-nilly. Like
Oh
there's
yeah.
a lot of money that would have to
Oh,
go into it to make it right. So I'm not
I don't
they
know.
fucking slide
surprised.
down a set of stairs on a Fender amp. I'm sure it wasn't a real Fender amp that they used for that,
No,
but
no,
No,
but
no, I guess
all
it's a
those
big
things cost a
stunt.
pretty penny. But
Yeah, yeah.
even creating a replica of those things, you got to
not.
pay somebody for that to make it look real and then to make it usable as a prop. And
All
I could
right.
point out little inaccuracies and flaws here and there, and I could be all nitpicky, but ultimately, I had a good time, and this film was, you could tell that there was a lot of passion made behind it, and it was just meant to be a fun, passable, good
Man,
time,
I
Totally.
and that's what it was.
I
This is
guess,
this,
yeah.
this to me is a 6.9, easy.
Nice. Let me go over things I do like before I get into my rating, just to bounce it out. Like I said, I'll point out my 4 laugh chuckles and a ha. First chuckle, Meatloaf showing up. That caught me off guard. Second
Oh
chuckle,
yeah.
I actually had a chuckle when he suddenly grew like a third arm in the dream sequence. Like that was like kind of like a clever like nonsense joke. I also chuckled when he somehow like ended up at the Rock and Roll Museum after his drug trip. I was like, that was a subvert because it makes it seem like it's like, oh, where am I? And you think he's gonna be in the middle of nowhere, and then it's like, oh, I just happened to show up. I was like, that was kind of clever. That got a chuckle out of me. And the fourth chuckle was that police brutality joke, and the one ha was for the devil showing up at the end. Like I said, I
Oh
like the
yeah.
music. I don't like it lyrically, but it's incredibly well performed. There's some sick guitar and drum solos. I'm pretty sure Dave Grohl did a lot of the drumming for the soundtrack too. And yeah, I love his work as always. And I like Jack Black in the movie. I can, even though a lot of what he did wasn't funny to me, I could tell he still cared. And compared to the block of wood he has to work with, he's got a lot of, he's the kind of actor where even if he's in a bad comedy, I still feel like he gives it 110%. He tries to pump like some energy and charisma into his role, and I can respect that. So I'll give props to him. But man, this film just wasn't it for me, man. Like I was watching it with my mother, and there were like 10 moments when I was reaching for the remote.
Well,
Fast forward because I just was not
Huh.
vibing
I
with it
wonder
at
if
all.
that affected it at all.
I think it probably did, and I'll say this: I think these guys are aware that this isn't like high arts. Like, there's a lot of self-depreciating humor in this, especially in
Yeah.
these little exchanges with them coming up as a band and them being kind of losers, and people not really caring about their arts. Like, there's lots of little slights when they're doing the open mic nights throughout that thing, and I think that shows a lot of self-awareness about how those early gigs go. Like, and they're playing it up. They're acting like they have a lot of ego, and all the people in the bar couldn't give a shit. You know what I mean? And I do think that there is a lot of self-reflective and self-depreciating humor in that. And even the way that they fantasize about themselves, like completely kicking ass when he's like, "I do not need a microphone," and that is those are the kind of fantasies you have when you're really ambitious and young, trying to get into playing music. You have those kind of like
Unstop.
perfect gig kind
Unstop.
of, yeah, like those perfect kind of gig scenarios playing in your head. But I think it shows a lot of that. And even when he's fighting off, or when the Druids like completely kick his ass and then they walk off, and then Kyle comes up and pretends he's like fought them off. Like, I like those little subtle like hints of them acting like they're something that they're not. And I did see that as like self-depreciating humor. So I think there's a little more into it than you're giving it credit for. Um,
I don't know.
Yeah, not to mention the fact that like they shit on Tribute, the song that made them everything, because
yes, they do.
that sells it as we defeated the
But that's
devil,
like
and
the
as we
bare
actually
minimum
learn,
for a movie
they
like
don't
this,
defeat
though.
the devil. The devil's like, fuck you, I won, and it's only through a technicality with the reflection, like the bounce back and the thing they learned earlier with the chant, they didn't actually do the thing, so they're like they're shitting on themselves to such deep extent, you know. I think that's like you really hit it on the
I
head with
feel
that one,
like it.
Devin.
I don't know.
It's
Like, I
very
feel like it's bare
tongue-in-cheek
minimum.
humor, and it's very self-aware, and I appreciate that because it shows that they want to be badass rock stars, but they realize that they're not all that, and so they poke fun at themselves while playing the music that they like. And I think that's I just see that as an ultimate win, to quote the Avengers.
What would you rate it out of 10, Daryl, before I disappoint you with my rating?
Well, it doesn't matter what your rating is because mine's a 9.6. I know,
Nice.
Oh!
yeah, I know exactly what this movie is, and I have a huge bias against it. But unlike you,
Or
Ian,
you mean?
this is sorry, yes, for it. But unlike you, I think this is like this album is the best music Tenacious D wrote. Post Apocalypto's okay. The early stuff is like just a bit too juvenile for me personally. Like Fuck Her Gently's okay, but like there's some stuff on that first album that is just meh. And Rise of the Phoenix it still doesn't even retain the strength that like this full composition that
Their
has
albums
a
did get
start,
better after
beginning,
this. I'll give
middle,
you
and
that.
end.
Yeah.
Yeah, so like to me, like that's what really pushes this beyond. Like they made one of my favorite like rock albums in my youth. I think that like, and through all the parody and whatnot, otherwise, like I like these songs like were super special to me. Like I didn't even mention it, but like my group of friends, like when we used to get drunk around like I don't know 18 and 19, like when we just it was just a staple. Like at some point in the night, we would put on Beelzebub, and we would all scream every lyric to Beelzebub and like stand in a circle
Nice.
just yelling it
Yeah.
at each other. And yeah, so like this one hits me real deep. And yeah, I'm throwing in the 0.6 because I know Ian's gonna go super hard, so it would be a 9, but 9.6. I mean, and also 6.9.
Yeah.
Lol.
Nice.
Well,
Nice.
this
I
movie
mean,
does.
anything 6.9 and above is good. That's the lowest good rating,
Yeah.
I'd
Yeah.
say.
I
But
don't
no,
know.
I
Just to me, this does right what I don't think. Like I think Spinal Tap misstepped a bit, whereas this one did it perfectly in terms of the same kind of like we're not going full like structure. I don't know. I just it's just a reverse of you guys. You know what I'm saying, Ian? Like
Yeah.
we just have
it knows what it
flaws.
is, and that's admirable.
Yeah.
And it is an admirable film. I can't hate it.
Yeah.
And
I can't like hate it either, and it knows what it is, and that's admirable. I agree with that.
Oh,
I
you can
just,
hate it. It's
I
fine.
just, I just really don't like what it is. I guess I'm just
Yeah, yeah.
really.
I
None of
mean,
the
it
humor
just made you
landed.
swear. That's all.
None of the humor
Just
landed, and the thing about a bad serious movie is that you could get some good laughs out of it. We talked about Mr. Holland's Opus last week, and that was a great comedy for me at certain points. But a bad comedy, a
ah.
comedy where the jokes don't land, it's just a painful experience. Unfortunately, that's what this was. I wanted to love it more than I did. I was gonna give it a 3.4, but for the music and Jack Black and Dave Grohl's Satan, I'll give it a very reluctant 4. That's the most you're getting out of me with this one.
I'll take
Not
it.
even a 5. Wow.
Yeah,
Dang.
surprise.
Nope.
That
Sorry.
happens.
This is getting really hard, guys. I think it's time to walk hard. wow, he walked hard. That transition.
I loved
He
when
walked
he
so
said the
hard.
thing and he just really emphasized the title.
Yeah, I know. Let's talk about a movie I was expecting to be shit, but was pleasantly surprised. Let's talk about Walk Hard, the Dewey Cox story. So, this is starring John C. Reilly and is a perfect example of why he shouldn't act with Will Ferrell anymore because his movies are way funnier when he isn't with Will Ferrell. It's about the story of Dewey Cox. It's a spoof of many different biopics, more specifically, Walk the Line with bits of Ray and a few other biopics thrown there for good
Many
measure.
others.
It's about the rise of
I'm
Dewey
not there.
Cox,
I
who,
think.
yeah, I'm not there. Whatever the Bob
Buddy Holly
Dylan.
story, La Bamba. You
Mm-hmm.
could just keep
Yes,
listing
like
names.
just a
I
huge list.
they had Malcolm in the Middle playing Buddy Holly. That was hilarious.
Yeah, let's not get too far ahead though. So this is about Dewey Cox, who tragically murdered his brother with a machete. It was an accident, we swear. And he grows up in his full adult form as a 12-year-old, sorry, a 14-year-old, with his full adult wife, who's a 12-year-old. They make some music together that causes a fucking fist fight. And after that, they go off into a musical career, and you know how the story goes. This movie knows that you know how the story goes. And holy crap, I love this movie. Is it perfect? Far from it, but I had an absolute blast. There were parts where I just couldn't stop laughing. And again, like This Is Spinal Tap, it also feels like a love letter to like music in general. Like the writers behind it clearly did their research for musical history and the history behind so many different bands. Like all of the costumes feel very authentic. The music is unironically great. Just a huge attention to detail for a comedy like this. And there are a few jokes that go on too long, a few duds, but the jokes that hit just really hit. And anytime it made fun of genre tropes and biopics or other stupid movies, I could not get enough. What do you guys think of Walk Hard?
So this was my first time watching the entire thing.
What?
Yeah. So I remember seeing one scene out of context. I believe this might have been just on TV, or I think I remember even seeing like previews of it in the grocery store. And it was right when that guy walks in the frame with his dick out. And this
Good
was
pick.
playing in the grocery store, back when they had like an
I'm
electronics
sorry.
section also. And I'm like, Jesus Christ,
You
that's
can't
an event
show
I
that
need to
here.
see. Yeah, I remember being a little kid and just getting a face full of that. And I'm like, yeah. So
My goodness.
I had successfully repressed that memory for the longest time,
Good.
and I didn't think that this was a movie worth seeking out. Boy, was I wrong, because this is a fantastic parody
I know.
of everything music biopic. Like this is some genuinely clever juvenile humor, and man, there's there were just so many great things in this that I can't even begin. But I just remember having that one like repressed memory of seeing that just out of context. But then coming back to it, years later and rediscovering what it all was, there's just so much more beneath the surface that was hysterical. This was one of the most times I've laughed watching a movie in a while,
Really?
and that's saying something. Like there was
Hell
just so
yeah.
many genuine fresh laughs. And what's funny, I decided to watch Walk the Line also like before watching this so that I would get a little more of the humor. And Walk the Line's a pretty good movie, I'll say that. But this so perfectly lampoons it and makes fun of it that I can see why this movie quote unquote ruined music biopics for a while. Just because it's so hard to look at Walk the Line after having seen Walk Hard and take it seriously with how they play up certain things, even though it's made more or less in earnest. This just kind of highlights the ridiculousness of some things a little bit, and man, I can't even begin to describe just how hilarious and revelatory it was to watch this
Yeah.
for the first
It.
time. So
I'm
man,
so jealous that you got to watch this for the first time because it's
Me too.
been yeah, like wow, I don't know. I didn't see it in theaters, but I remember I wanted to. So when I missed it, it was one of those like I couldn't wait for it to come out on DVD. Finally, I got my hands on it, and like I think I remember when I brought the DVD, like the rental, back to the Blockbuster or whatever, I immediately went and bought a copy of it. Like it was
nice.
it just hit me right from the beginning. So as I've probably mentioned a bunch in past podcasts and stuff, like I'm a kid of like 50s and 60s music. So like I was raised on like not only the music but the biopics. Like my parents love them. Like I've done I've made it my goal to show a bunch of them to Jamara just so like she appreciates Walk Hard a bit more. Like it was like it was just speaking a language that I had been taught before. You know what I mean? And like there's some really subtle stuff that gets brought up that is like the weakest influences to it's amazing that how much detail and how much research was done.
Oh yeah.
Like it really messes me up.
You can tell they really did their homework and they really knew what they were lampooning, and that's what makes it all the better. Just the amount of detail. I love how he just keeps ripping out sinks.
Oh my god, it's so good.
Isn't that a reference to
okay? In Walk Hard, he does it exactly one time, and then they just turn it into an ongoing gag throughout this, and it's fucking hilarious.
It's just
so
perfect.
Good. There's like a lineup of sinks at the final montage.
At the very end, yeah. Oh my gosh.
Yeah, there's so many great like running jokes. My favorite was the dad who just randomly brings up the wrong kid died. Even if it makes no sense for him to bring it up.
It's a thing that happens in Walk Hard, in Walk the Line, because
of course it
Well,
does.
I'll spoil a little bit of Walk the Line, but it's similar. It's not that they had a machete fight, which is hysterical, and dark, but like in Walk the Line, his brother was just chopping up wood on a bandsaw that someone in town hired him to do, and he told him that he could walk home and like go ahead of him. He'll just finish up here, and he accidentally cuts himself on there and maimed himself mortally, and it's a very sad kind of scene. And then the father says that the wrong son died. Which in context is very sad and very tragic, but the way they keep bringing it up here in this film is hysterical.
It totally goes the other way. Like,
yeah. I'm gonna be honest, I wasn't 100% with the film yet. Obviously, the machete bit was hilarious, but outside of that, I was kind of like, eh. But as soon as it goes to the class and you get this long take of all these, kids around 12 to 14 years old, they're a bunch of teenagers, all cast at the right age. And then it shows John C. Reilly as a full adult, and the movie is basically shitting on how like poorly casted adult actors are as child actors. I was like, I clapped. Like, I was so happy. I'm like, thank you for making fun of the dumbest trope in movies. Sam Raimi needs to fucking watch this movie because that's a trope I hate so much.
I'm Dewey's 12-year-old girlfriend.
Yeah, I'm Dewey's 12-year-old girlfriend.
Like the fact that they like, oh my gosh, you could name every fucking good line.
And also movie. Like the satire of that scene where it's like, it's making fun of like how rock and roll somehow influenced like all this sex culture and knowledge about like Satanism and how it'll bring about the devil, even though like the intention of it was purely wholesome. We were just saying about holding hands. You watch your mouth. You know who was also holding hands? The devil. And the devil was going to be holding hands with you when he drags you to hell.
Oh my fucking god, that killed me so hard.
I immediately was like, I thought this was going to be a different movie, but I'm on board for this glorious satire. I was expecting
so well done. Like, and like we've talked about music for everything. I think this is kind of like the epitome. Like, there is songs on this soundtrack, and you know what? I say that, but there's also a couple that I don't. Whereas Tenacious D is like a perfect soundtrack to me. There are a couple misses that are just straight up for the sake of the parody in the movie, and
what's your
listening
favorite?
To them is meh. My favorite? Oh, you'd be surprised. So it's kind of like the top three are Royal Jelly, then Black Sheep, and then Beautiful Ride. Because boy, let me tell you, after watching this movie all through my youth as a super stoner movie, and like constantly another one of those, me and my friends all would get together, we'd watch it over and over and over again. When I revisited it after going to college and taking the Beatles, Beach Boys, and Bob Dylan course, holy goddamn, did it reach a whole new level of appreciation.
And
going back to after seeing Love and Mercy was hysterical.
Like, that was wild how we brought up like there's go.
Yeah, it perfectly parodies Love and Mercy before that movie even came out. And it was funny. That movie, I think, is what kind of reinvigorated the whole music biopic thing
Mhm.
because it just took a totally different approach with that compared to like Walk the Line, which is more a linear kind of plot where I don't want to spoil too much of Love and Mercy, but we covered it in the podcast before.
It
That
jumps.
is
It's two like separate timelines happening at once. I think
It's
that's
yeah,
Brian
the
Boss
and
at two very
non-spoiler,
different
right?
points in
Like
his
that's
life. Yeah.
yeah,
it,
and
it covers the broader spectrum of his life, and it does so in a very beautiful way that really comes together. But the whole scene of him doing going through like a pet sounds phase and everyone not getting it, and
yeah.
it's kind of is a low point in this, but it's hysterical.
Oh my God, the Bob Dylan sequence. That
Oh,
not
the don't
only
look back stuff. Yeah,
yes. Oh
it's
man,
so good.
it was
Well,
shot
why
like
don't
the
you?
cinematography is perfect. Like they
Yeah,
perfectly nailed like how those were shot.
Okay, of these three films, this is by far the best cinematography.
I
It looks
know.
fantastic.
It's insane.
Like
well, they had this mentality going in that they say in the behind the scenes is that because I believe Walk Hard was nominated for best cinematography, so they were like, if we shoot it
wow.
the same way, we deserve to be nominated. So we're proving to you that it doesn't actually matter how good your cinematography is. They won't look at us because we're a parody movie, but we're going out to achieve a
I
Oscar level of
respect that.
cinematography, and it shows, man. Like there's the biggest difference between this and Tenacious D. I'll fully admit the cinematography is a whole nother level above. Whole nother.
That was such a pleasant surprise. Like there were several shots where I'm like, this is like a great shot because there's so many of these kind of improv comedies where it's very bland, it's very evenly lit. It's basically just about the actors like going on stage and doing improv. It's not really about shooting it in an interesting way, but this film has like different shooting styles. Like the costumes look great, the lighting is great in certain scenes. Like I actually unironically love the shot where it's like hold up, he has to look back on his entire life before he goes on stage. But that shot of him like
It's
waiting to go on
gorgeous.
stage is gorgeous. I'm like, why do I want to frame this John C. Riley movie and put it on my wall? Like, what is happening?
Oh, dude. Oh.
Who was the cinematographer on this? I
That's
feel
a good
like
Honestly,
question.
off the
I
top of
hope
my
it's
head, I
the
don't
same
remember.
one. I hope it's the same one. So bad, but it probably
Let
is.
me
Well,
see.
I don't think they just were going for the same like style. I don't know if they actually hired the same guy.
That'd be hilarious if they did, but yeah.
Let's
I'm
see.
just checking. I'm pretty sure it was somebody who
Uda
shot like
Braiswitz. Uda
oh
Braiswitz.
Uda, yeah.
Let's
Stranger
see.
Things.
She did a great. Oh, she shot
Ooh.
Stranger. Holy shit! Yeah,
Some
that's
of
another
it,
gorgeous
yeah.
show.
XXXY
Oh, she shot
Vanishing on
Westworld.
7th Street.
The Wire. Holy shit! She's got quite the
Yeah,
track
so
record.
not necessarily like known for feature or whatever, but that should show you even more that when it comes to cinematography, like it's all about getting the right views on the project
Oh, yeah.
because like you go this hard for something you know is going to be seen by so many people, right? Like, oh, I just that
He did a terrific job on this. I have to say that because it was fantastic looking. It absolutely nails the period, and it's almost like it undersells or oversells like you don't expect the comedy because of how seriously good looking the cinematography is, which makes it even funnier. Like just that
Yeah.
contrast.
it can be dumber comedy that
This
way
looks like
too,
a
right?
serious biopic film, but then it's John C. Riley. What's that?
Oh, it can just be. I'm sorry, we're delaying again, but it can just be like more like you can be like campier comedy if you're more serious, like you're saying visuals. Like it kind of that
Exactly.
contrast is so much stronger. Yeah. Sorry. Continue. Sorry.
And that's why it makes going back and watching Walk the Line so hard to take seriously, which is why I watched it first. Um,
So
but now,
Good
but now
choice.
when I think about when I think about Walk the Line, I can't help but think about how it was lampooned and Walk Hard, and it just does such a good job of it.
I know.
And
And like,
I have to talk about the Beatles sequence when he goes to India and he
Oh
meets up with the Beatles,
yes.
so
played
good.
by
What do you think,
what
George
Paul
Harrison
Rudd
of
was
the
John
Beatles?
Lennon, George
George
and fucking
Harrison
Paul
of the
McCartney,
Beatles.
played by Jack Black. Jack Black's been in 3 movies for the last 2 weeks.
Yeah.
Just
This is
keeps
great.
getting in there.
That and it's Paul Rudd who does a shockingly good Beatles impression, and like Justin Long, and I don't know who the fourth guy is.
Jason Schwartzman. It's like, you can't see his eyebrows, but like,
about
yeah.
that. Yeah, Jason Schwartzman is in this movie, and then the next scene, there's a lawyer called Schwartzman who wasn't played by Jason Schwartzman,
No.
but he looks a lot like Jason Schwartzman.
Okay, I have a note on that though, because I wanted to bring this up when you talked about Spinal Tap. But the one thing I think that like may hold this back from aging super well, if we get like super PC about things in the future, is like
Oh boy.
the portrayal of Jewish, like the Jew zone
Screw you, that
show
was
business,
funny.
all that. Like I think that's like a big old parody about like we've been saying, like there's just every biopic movie would have this strange Jewish gentleman who comes in and he says, "Hey, I can make you a superstar." Like they all have it. Buddy Holly, La Bamba. Like it's just a trait for some reason in these films. So I feel like it's more like just leaning in heavily and then saying like, oh, you want to put a Jewish one in there? Everybody's gonna look like a rabbi. You know what I mean? Like I
That
feel
was
like
great.
it's just taking it to. And
They
Harold
have
Ramis,
fucking
oh my god, so good as
and
the
then
rabbi.
they have the actor that eventually played Howard in fucking Big Bang Theory.
Yes.
Yeah,
But
way
he's
before
like,
he was in Big Bang. Yeah.
we have Dewey Cow, we have Little Nutsack doing a collaboration. What a little package.
Yeah, I don't know, man. I felt like that was the joke. Like it's I like how people make fun
That's
of
what I'm
Tropic
saying, yeah.
Thunder for blackface, but even though like the entire point of that was making fun of blackface in Hollywood and how white people are basically
Yes.
pretending to be black. Like I feel like this is the same case where it's like it's making fun of like Jewish stereotypes in cinema. It's not exactly
Yes.
endorsing it, but I feel like people could look at it the wrong way. Like
That's
you
the
said.
wonder, right? Like as it ages more and more and that like 60s era gets further and further, like it just sucks that like, I think the main crowd that would really love this probably never even saw it, like the older like people that were like kind of like my parents,
think it did
like
too well
I
in
feel like
theaters.
those people would just lose it at a film this accurate, especially if they went through it all, right? Like
Oh yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, I
I feel
think
like
that's why
this
it
was
is
that
such
era of
popular.
comedy where there was just a lot of crude comedies coming out, and it was, I was still a kid at that point, and my parents weren't into these kind of comedies, so I just couldn't see them, even though I
Oh.
definitely wanted to. I remember I got to see Step Brothers, and I really liked that movie. And I guess it's no surprise that this is just, I'd say this is even, better than that.
It's him in
But
his prime, right? Like I think this is
Oh,
like
100%.
that's
I think
like
this
his
was. I think this
improv
was.
is fire.
This was them in their stride, in their prime. Um, there was even a great music sequence in Step Brothers.
Yeah, it's so true. It's so true.
With John C. Reilly on the drum set, and it was accurate drumming too, which I appreciated.
Now,
And
Devin, I
bringing
wanted
up
to
the
ask
music,
that.
yeah,
Bringing up the
so
music. John C.
accurate.
Reilly does his own singing.
Well, he
Devin,
toured, eh?
yeah,
Like,
he
did you know?
toured.
Yeah,
And
I would've
also the
killed.
actress who played the sexual tension love interest, Pam from The Office, also toured along with him.
Yeah,
Devin,
but they
does he
replaced
know how
her.
to play guitar? Does he actually play guitar in the movie? I want to know this.
Oh yeah.
Yeah,
Oh really?
like that whole one shot where it's like you have 20 seconds to change music history, and it's like it's one of my favorite shots. It just starts on his face, and he's so concentrated, and you hear the music, and it pans down, and he's playing that. It's actually like not quite perfectly in time, which is how you know he was really playing it. Yeah.
Damn.
And this is the other thing. So this is an element of filmmaking. When you're filming something and recording something, you want the visual and the sound to be as best it can be. The take that you see isn't necessarily the take that you hear, but you can tell that he is playing it the same. It's just not quite exactly the same, but he is holding the right chord shapes. It's just that he recorded that song in his studio with high quality microphones beforehand, and now he's trying to replicate playing the same thing on camera. So it's a different take that what you're seeing, what you're hearing, but it is still him playing in both cases, or him. He knows where to put his fingers on the guitar to have
Holy
that.
shit.
The
Yeah,
right
he
chord
didn't write it all. I know they had a specific like
Mhm.
they had like historians
Yeah, I know
doing
that.
some of the music, which is one of the reasons why they don't show like as I mentioned, one of my favorite songs is Black Sheep. The reason being because the full version is fucking amazing.
From
They
what I've
only
heard,
play like that middle part that's kind of like now that the blade has been swung, and like
Swung.
they really go into that, but like the full song and how it moves through different movements, like they were trying to make a Pet song and they succeeded. Like it's amazing.
Yeah.
So
Oh
And I love how they all shit on it too, which is really funny.
yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
it's going too
There's
fast.
there's like 5 songs happening at once.
Shut up! I know what I'm doing.
That damn goat's been singing more than me.
And then that
Oh, fuck.
fucking that was a great parody. And I'm not a big fan of like sexual tension comedy in movies, but this movie nailed it. The sexual tension song it made me laugh way harder than I expected. I love how it's like subtle at first, but then at the end she just straight up says, "You can always come in my back door." It's just like subtlety is just thrown out the window at the end. And I was like, I wasn't expecting that payoff.
What's that Billy Wilder movie with Marilyn Manson that they parody too? Some Like It Hot, is that what it's called?
Yeah, Some Like It Hot.
Yeah, that the whole like her being in the bunk with him was a direct reference to that.
Yeah.
Yeah. I could tell that it was, and I love all the very not so subtle hints that she's giving him throughout. And
the sign scene,
ridiculous push pull. That is such a good parody of what happens in Walk the Line. I'll just say
oh my
that.
god,
Yeah.
and then she knees him in the balls. Yeah.
Or no, when she like kisses him and she slaps him, I'm like, I'm not that kind of woman. All right, well we could be friends. Okay. But it's like, you kissed him. Like, what the fuck? What's happening?
So good.
Yeah, that's the joke.
Oh my God.
It's
like
so good.
he leans into her, she pulls away. She leans into him, he pulls away, and then it just keeps going like that.
Yeah,
for a while.
like 10 seconds.
And while we're on music, I just have an extra button that I feel like every time I bring it up, people don't believe me, but we are dead serious. The song "A Life Without You Is No Life at All" will be mine and Jamar's first dance. Like
hell yeah, I want to be there. I want to be there to witness that.
Hells
Me
yeah,
too.
man. Like they
Wait,
didn't
you
just
haven't
say.
had a wedding yet?
Pardon?
You haven't had a wedding yet?
No, we haven't been married yet. But that's the plan. Is like I know it's like all jokes, but that song specifically is like basically just a general Roy Orbison parody. I think like that's just kind of the vibes I get from it. I don't think it's like necessarily a certain song parody, and it's unique, and it's like there's like one line that's kind of just humor as hell, but the rest of it's just such a good love song. Like it's just top quality.
Yeah,
man.
it's genuinely a good love song to the point where I was talking to my friend who watched this movie, and it's like, yeah, my grandma still thinks this is just a love song because she hasn't watched the movie. She doesn't really get like the sexual tension.
Yeah.
Undertones. It's like, you in my dreams, you're blowing me some kisses. I'm like, I hate this kind of comedy normally, but you nailed it.
So Steven highlighted a picture of when he's like, kissing her feet. Of course he did.
Oh yeah.
But I love the line that he says immediately after, where he says, "When you were telling me about that dream where you were looking at my balls, I took that as maybe a hint." Like just, I couldn't stop laughing at that. I mean, it's.
Did you guys have any problems with the movie? Because mine are fairly minor.
Yeah,
I mean, other than the fact that I saw like the full, I saw a full frontal Bert's Ernie, at a contact at a grocery store when I was when did this movie come out? 2007.
This movie gave me PTSD. I hate it.
I hate that I saw that scene at a contact and then it made me write it off.
Why did Walmart play that?
Totally.
Right? Right? It's like someone just wasn't supervising.
They obviously didn't watch it first. They were just like, it's a Jesse Riley comedy. It's fine.
Like, do you remember like Zayre's grocery stores, and they used to have like an electronic section,
and
they would have like TVs play? Or no, I think it was a superstore. Same
Zellers,
like,
maybe?
Logic.
Yeah, no, but I know what you mean, because all it would take is like have an R-rated movie.
Grocery store. It was a grocery store, but there was an electronics section. Like when you check out, they have. Oh, here's like one room where we have electronics, and there was just TVs, like giant CRTs in there, and then there's just a scene where the guy walks up and there's his dick in the corner of the frame. I mean, it's hilarious now, but back then I'm like, I can't believe they're showing this in a grocery store. Maybe I saw it on TV, and I'm putting it in there because I also remember seeing clips of it.
Was that also the first time you've seen a man's penis?
Jesus. Well, now we're into some deep stuff.
These are the important questions.
Right.
Anyways, in terms of like issues for the movie,
I just hate that scene. That made me not want to go watch the rest of it like for years. But I am happy that I'm going back and rediscovering it now.
But now you can appreciate it properly.
And I can appreciate all the jokes in it. Like, it's not just a bunch of random shit. They're very intentionally lampooning a lot of music history, and it's just a big treasure trove of references.
Oh yeah.
I like on my second, like on this most recent watch, I should say, because I actually rewatch this one a lot. Like still, like I love the soundtrack to death. So, but this time specifically, I tried to be a bit more critical, and the things I was only really finding were just obvious moments of improv where like you could feel like the scene
Yeah.
was done, and then like let's have fun with this option or this take. Like I don't know, like there's things like obviously there's the big continuity errors in the end that are just funny where they're doing a flashback of like all the things that have happened.
But didn't
Or well,
happen.
but like yeah, exactly. Like he's playing guitar with his dad, and like Chris, what's his name? Chris Parnell gets
Chris
shot,
Parnell.
which doesn't happen.
Yeah.
And like I don't know, there's just like something to the movie where it's so self-aware. Like again, just kind of
Oh,
like how
yeah.
you felt about Spinal Tap. Like I feel like it's so just on the nose that it's hard to critique.
It's unapologetic, but that's what
Yeah.
I love about it. There's elements of it that are bad, but objectively kind of make it funnier. Either or not they were intentional is debatable. Like the child acting is fucking awful, and the old person makeup is very noticeable. But
okay.
I mean, those
Yeah.
elements kind of make it funnier, so it works. But
And the old person makeup's definitely a trope of the biopics too, right?
oh,
Like they love to
100%.
do that horrible fucking age
Yeah,
makeup.
just that age makeup, and I love how the drug guy, like his hairline like isn't even a consistent color. It's
No,
like
no.
black, then it's gray, then it's black again. And yeah,
he
that
never
felt
once
like it
paid
was
for drugs.
yeah, and then he
Not
brings a
once.
big bag of weed. He had a great redemption arc. Better than
Oh yeah.
Meatloaf and
Yeah,
Tenacious D.
there you go. Exactly.
There you go. That solved your problem, Deb.
Yeah.
But in terms of real problems, yeah, like the improv was definitely noticeable at times. There were some jokes that were just went on for too long, and I thought it kind of lagged in the middle a little bit. Like I enjoyed the Beatles cameo, but the other stuff was like it kind of felt like Lord of the Rings in a way, where it's like it feels like it's wrapping up, but it somehow just keeps going, and it kind of lags a bit, but it picks right back up in the third act where he gets kids from all different kinds of ethnicities. I'm like, all right, we're right back into a movie. I'm back
Well,
on
Dewey
board.
Rahim.
Yeah. Or are you sure you're my kid?
Yeah,
He
that one.
finally asks.
One thing that blew my mind though while you're talking about the kids, so the one who's like, "Hey dad, will you have a catch with me?" That's the fucking kid from the second series of Wet Hot American Summer, and he was in like the Santa Clarita Diet.
No
He's in a
shit.
bunch of stuff now. Skylar something. Like if you
No
look
way.
up his actual name, like you definitely like he's a new budding actor. Definitely wasn't like he was like 9 or 10, so it wasn't like the greatest performance, but like it was wild. Like I just could see like, wow, you're that like that actor as a kid. I never would have imagined. Skylar Gizondo is his name.
What a name. What a name.
But yeah,
And
if
what a
if
movie.
anybody's interested, yeah, what a fucking movie, man.
Fucking
Yeah,
A.
the only other thing I have to add is just like I know I told you guys already, but like this very few movies would ever make us put a reference to a movie in a song. And when my band broke up and then came back together after college, our first song was called Never Have I Ever, and there's like 3 references to Dewey Cox in it. Like we literally would just like love the film so much we had to put him in with
Did you get your friend a big bag of weed to make
Pardon?
amends?
No, yeah, that's awesome.
Did you get your
Yeah.
friend a big bag of weed to make amends?
Yeah, exactly.
Nice.
No,
I'm that kind of person.
that's awesome, man. Like, and I listened to the song, and I could tell that would have hyped up a room if especially if they got the references. You just have that kind of like little break, and then you just sort of ad lib one of the lines, and then come back
All
in
these
with a
blankets
breakdown.
have saved my life. Like just like
This man
random
needs
things.
more blankets and less blankets at the same time.
I'm afraid you're right.
Yeah, the most accurate depiction.
You
of
just
a
got
theater.
that breakdown on the China symbol,
Right?
whatever it was. But yeah,
Yeah.
that's that whole metal scene in a nutshell, right there. Just put in a random movie quote and then come in with the breakdown on the China symbol.
Exactly,
Fuck
exactly. And Rick Hall, who I mean, we gave him a shout out once or twice before on the podcast. He didn't even know what the movie was, and like 2 years ago was like, "Was Walk Hard what you guys were referencing?" Like he was just floored.
He was like,
he thought
"Oh
we were
my
just being
God."
random. Yeah,
I no longer freebase acid or whatever that line is.
He
mainlining acid.
he
Yeah.
got red pilled. He finally saw the truth.
Acid.
What would you guys
ripping
rate
accent.
Walk Hard? Pardon my English. Out of 10.
Honestly, I'm gonna give it a solid 8 just from the first watch. It's probably gonna go up over time. And yeah, I was thoroughly impressed with it. It was the most I laughed in a while. There were moments where I had to pause and just keep laughing and catch my breath before I continue.
Nice.
And even take a nice long hard walk after certain moments just to really take it all in. It was good.
Boo.
Don't you dare write a song right now, Devin.
Wait, did you?
Sorry.
Did you just take a tab? Well, no.
No, this was great. I thoroughly enjoyed it, and it was a good time. And I'm glad that I had the foresight after. Well, Steven had texted me. He started watching this, and he was giving me his little live reactions. And he says, "I think I should have watched Walk the Line first." And I'm like, "That's a good idea." And so I got that idea from Steven to watch Walk the Line first, and it gave me all the more appreciation for this. And now I want to go back and make sure I need to see um I'm Not There. I still haven't seen that one yet, and a couple other ones that they referenced just to really appreciate the jokes. But it was great even just from this first watch.
What about you, Daryl?
Okay, I want to put the asterisk because like I feel like there's been this growing theme where I keep rating movies super high when I come on the podcast. But the thing is, I keep only being on the episodes that contain some of my favorite movies ever made. So I swear I'm not this easily pleased.
Don't hold
but this
back.
one is a full-on 10 for me.
Hey!
Because it connects to me like deep down. Echoes a bit of what Tenacious D felt, but this is a step beyond Tenacious D to me. And yeah, you know what? I just love the damn thing. So yeah, that's my rating. Did you rate it already, Ian?
Nope.
Or you?
Okay,
what do you
Devin.
got? What do you got?
Pacing's a little bit sloppy at parts, but it's such a perfect, funny, faithful mockery of biopics that you just it's one of the best times I've had with a movie in a while, just like you, Devin. And I'm giving this one a great out of 10. It's closer to an 8.5 than a 7.5. I'm buying this movie on Blu-ray. Fuck it. If there's a 4K, I'll probably buy it on that.
There's really good special features. Bull almost
I'm
killed the people shooting. You know that where the bull's running towards?
Yeah, the bulls. Yeah, it's a real bull and a real giraffe.
It jumped over the fence.
It's a real fucking giraffe.
Oh yeah.
No, if I find the DVD or the Blu-ray of this next time I see it, I'm picking it up. You know, it was funny. I was at a flea market that I always go to, just this outdoor kind of market where a bunch of vendors, and there's this little movie hut that always has a bunch of cheap $1 DVDs in it. And I went looking for this movie because I know I had seen this movie just every time that I go there. Like I know I'd seen it around, but I ran into like 5 copies of Walk the Line, and I couldn't find Walk Hard. The one time I had to search, the one time I was trying to look for it. But next time I see it, I'm picking it up.
There's no 4K, but you can get the Blu-ray.
Nice.
This is also one, though, I will warn you, it's also like Hot Tub Time Machine, where the unrated version is not quite as good. It's just just for movies of this time, they would just call them unrated, and they just give you like the not so funny version. Like it was.
Oh, you know what?
You know what I
the
mean?
leftovers. Yeah.
I have one nitpick. There were some weird moments where it just fades to black when a scene is over. And I feel like that's where maybe some extra scenes for the uncut version might have been in.
I thought that was like a spoof.
Like I don't know, maybe, but it just felt like a weird editing choice to me to just have the scene end, fade to black, and then cut into the next scene that takes place sometime later.
It's a bit of both.
I noticed it a little bit much.
Yeah.
It didn't fully take away from my experience. It didn't feel like it was a deliberate kind of gag, but it felt like there were some things that were edited out from a longer version that were maybe in place there. That's literally my only nitpick.
I will keep that in mind, Daryl. Thank you. And thank you for coming on to the podcast. This was a...
Oh, thanks, man.
Hell yeah.
Sorry, this was a fantastic episode. I had a total blast. I had a rough day at work, and you guys made my day a lot better, as always. So thank you guys for staying tuned, and thank you to our lovely audience for watching. Next week, we are talking about the Alien Trilogy, because there were only ever 3 Alien movies made, and no other Alien movies were ever made and have never existed ever. We're going to talk about Alien 1, Aliens, and Alien Cubed.
Wait, that's not the 3 movies. It's Alien, Prometheus, and Covenant. What are you talking about?
Exactly.
Oh man, I can feel the death stare through the computer.
I will run over. I know where you live, man.
Yeah,
I know where you fucking live.
I cannot wait to get into these, and I'm kicking myself that I didn't grab my VHS copies of it when I was at the Outer Trash.
Boo.
I have our original VHS copies still, and I keep them all at bay, and I should have looked ahead to when the schedule was that I could get them. But I will. Oh well, I
Yeah.
know where they are, and I'm pretty sure I have the Blu-rays of them anyway, so I'll be revisiting
They're on
those
a streaming
versions. But
service somewhere, I'm sure. And
oh
special
yeah,
thanks to my friend Matthew Jacob. Good luck racing that kid, buddy. If you're listening to this, thank you. Sorry about my opinions on Tenacious D, and thank you so much for recommending the Alien episode. And thank you to everyone else who's watching. And is it Thursday yet? Have a great night, guys. And as Stephen would say,